Okay.
Okay, you
One,
tell me when, Ilya.
yeah, it's recording. Yeah, recording
It's,
going on.
it's
Okay.
recording?
Yeah.
Okay, okay, we're back. All right, this evening we're going to go on a journey into the realms of teaching a culture of peace and justice. And I'm going to draw a lot on my experience as a teacher of peace and justice. But as I said, I want to first begin with some words of that other people have shared on the subject, and then after that, it'll be more my words and sharing. So this is from A Tale of Two Cities. A Tale of Two Cities, with Charles Dickens' famous novel there. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness. It was the epic of belief. It was the epic of incredulity. It was the season of light. It was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope. It was the winter of despair. We had everything before us. We had nothing before us. We were all going direct to heaven. We were all going direct to hell. We're all going one way or the other. And that is the reality at any given time. Okay, at any given time, there is hell and heaven. And our journey is to, during this lifetime, is to bring more of heaven into our life and share with other people, and bring less of hell into our life and share with other people. And our responsibility is not to change the world. Okay? That is not, if you try to change the world, you're going to be overwhelmed. You're going to give up. It's too much. Our responsibility is to change a piece of the world. Okay? A piece of the world, to take responsibility for peace. And we know when we join together, okay, the pie is complete. Okay? Don't bake the whole pie there. So there is also a selection from Proverbs, where there is no vision, the people shall perish. So I think also the challenge, of a culture of peace and justice, believing in a possibility that might not at this particular time be the reality. Okay? We have to have a dream. Okay? And then our role is to fulfill that dream. I know perhaps almost everyone in this room once had a dream that you would find someone to love, okay? And you would love and be loved. Perhaps one day you would find yourself being a father, to really continue the train of what being a father is, because your fathers did the best they could given who they are, and so did my father. And he was really a very difficult father to have, but he went further than his father, okay? And I've gone further than my father. So it's to keep that peace train going, to choose, what piece of the earth do we want to make ours there. Now, I want to read a couple more things, and then I will stop the reading. This is from Jeffrey Kluger, Writing in Time. The human story is a story of love, compassion, kindness, justice, beauty, and redemption. It is also a story of violence, neglect, indifference, injustice, ugliness, and cruelty. We are a species that is capable of almost dumbfounding kindness. We nurse one another, romance one another, weep for one another, ever since science taught us how we willingly tear the very organs from our bodies and give them to another. And at the same time, we slaughter one another. The past 15 years of human history have witnessed the infliction of untold horrors on ourselves. Mogadishu, Rwanda, Chechnya, Darfur, Baghdad, Pakistan, Lebanon, Israel, Palestine, New York City, Iraq, Afghanistan, the Amish schoolhouse in Pennsylvania, all crimes committed by the highest, wisest, most principled species that the earth has produced. That we are also the lowest, cruelest, most blood-drenched species is our shame and our paradox. Okay? And again, the journey is, we're not going to change everything. The humans are still in an evolutionary path like that. Our role is to decide which of those choices we're going to take. The road most traveled or the road less traveled. And that is the travel of peace and justice, the travel of peace to justice. And then we have Mr. Winston Churchill. As the technological capability of humans continues on its relentless march to who knows where, we must remember that there's a thin veil that separates civilized man from the savage man. Unless there is much effort put into the cultivation of the teachings of the heart, compassion, mercy, and caring, as there is into the cultivation of the mind, history teaches us that the human race is in store for barbaric tragedies on a scale that dwarfs the imagination. For that is our journey. And we all remember, Einstein, did an incredible thing, unleashing the power of the atom. And he was a man of peace. Okay, he was a man of peace. And we use that for energy to create, electricity and other positives. But we also use that energy to do Hiroshima, Nagasaki. That right now, the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, they have a famous clock. Okay, and the clock's been going on for years, and it's how close we are to nuclear catastrophe. And the clock right now is just a few seconds from midnight. We have more nuclear weapons on the earth right now than we have ever had, like that. And we have to face that we human beings do that. And what, if anything, do we want to do about that there? So where do we go? Where do we go from there? And where I want to go from there is to say the following, and then I'm going to go to my story, and then we're going to have a conversation like that. It is your journey. I want to repeat this, not to change the world, okay, but to take on responsibility for a part of it. Otherwise, you will give up, you'll become despairing, you'll become cynical, you'll drink too much, you'll take too many drugs, because your heart that wishes to do good has been hurt terribly, okay? And we want to stay away from that heart injury, so we do all kinds of things to avoid the fact that our hearts are hurting, okay? All babies, unless they're really damaged, are loving, compassionate, caring, joyous creatures, okay? Something happens along the way, okay, that turns them into being more devils than angels. But our initial being on planet Earth is that we are loving, we're compassionate, we're sharing, we want to reach out to everybody there. I saw a video the other day on YouTube where there was a black girl of about 4 or 5 years old and a white girl of 4 or 5 years old who were hugging and kissing each other. And someone said, you're not brother and sister. And both girls said, yes, we are brother and sister. She is my sister. I am her sister. What occurs along the way, not just to others, but also to ourselves, to step out of the journey of peace and justice, become despairing, become cynical, say it makes no difference there. That's a lie, okay? But you only know that's a lie if you get into the teachings of your heart there. So it is March 7th, 1940. I, Louis, am born, okay?
Luis,
I am born.
Luis,
Born.
one
Yes.
second. There is a radio playing in the background.
Yeah, that's okay. Let's turn it off. Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was listening to some kirtan music. I don't know if you know what that is, to get me ready for this. It makes me feel very peaceful, kirtan there. So it's March 7th, 1940, and I emerge into this world as a man, okay, as a man. Now, what did I learn as a child, a teenager, okay, a young man? What is a man? The first thing I learned, and this is true for so many people, and what happens is we take that journey as children and we project that into the larger world, okay? And that becomes a lens we look at the larger world, and we forget that we can change that lens. That lens is not permanent. I come from somewhat of a violent home. My father was mostly verbal violent to the degree, he would threaten to kill his wife, our mother, continuously, that if we did not behave, he would kill our mother, okay? I grew up, filled with, my first real experience was feeling that that this earth, is this thing called man is a violent, fearful creature. I was already learning what it is to be a man because we take in everything, okay? We take in everything, not just what we think we take in there. I was learning what it is to be a man. I was also learning to fear the species called male, okay? Just as a child. And that would continue to play out as I go through life there. We lived on Siegel Street in Brooklyn, New York. My mother and father, as I think most of you know, emigrated from Poland. My father when he was 7. My mother when she was 27. My mother experienced war. My father experienced the Cossacks coming to the Jews, down, doing their number on the Jews there, like that. And we grew up on Siegel Street, which was a slum, what we called a slum, filled with people who were not earning very much money, there. And we were 6 people. I think some of you know, like 3 rooms, only one sink in the house, in the kitchen. Everybody had to use the toilet, and then wash up. And my mother had to cook, and anything like that. And at times, the landlord would shut off the boiler during winter, or the boiler would break, and he would not fix it. Why? Well, the greenback dollar bill, he saved money. And who were we? Poor immigrants, vulnerable, just glad to have a place to put ourselves, and we were cold, we were freezing during the winter. Guess what? I had a mother, even though she was 4'11", okay, and didn't speak English. I had a mother who said, we're going to have rent strikes. If the most important thing to him is money, we're going to play his cards, and we're going to take away his money by having rent strikes. And my mother, Yetta, organized rent strikes. Okay, we refused to pay the rent. We were using money, as his, the weapon that he liked to use there. And after a few days, the boiler would be fixed or the boilers would be turned on. So I learned as a child, not that I was consciously taking in, because children take in everything. I was learning as a child, collective action can bring about change. If humans get together, we can bring about change. And that is also a vital lesson in either screwing the world or changing the world there. What else was going on there? My mother and father, when they came here, went to work in the garment industry, which was filled largely with Jewish immigrants, Lower East New York there. And they had a boss, and the boss was Jewish too, but he felt, he got caught up in what Moses said, don't worship. He got caught up in the golden calf, worshiping the golden calf, there. And he didn't want to pay wages that allowed people to pay their rent, buy their food, get some little nice things for themselves, so on and so forth there. So what happened? What did my mother and father do? They joined the ILGWU, the International Lady Garment Workers Union. And again, this was people who they were told they had no power, and as individuals, they didn't have power, because if you fired someone else would come in to take your job. So these poor people, poor in money, but bright and powerful, joined together and they went on strike, with the support of the larger ILGW, International Lady Garment Workers Union. And I don't know if any of you remember, part of the reason that came about, or even heard of, is the famous Triangle Fire in New York City, where I think it was in 1915 or 1920 something. There was the garment industry. They were hiring teenage girls and young children because their fingers are more nimble. And they felt as a female child gets older, their fingers are not as nimble. So using children and teenagers working with thread, so on and so forth, was wonderful. Now, they also felt that the girls, I'm talking about Triangle, mostly 15-year-olds, that the girls were taking too many breaks. So they closed the exit door. And when you're dealing with garments, you know, there is fibers all over, there's thread all over, there's gossamer all over. And a fire began, and the girls wanted to get out, but the door had been locked. Okay? So the only way out was through the window, which was high up. And the fire department came, and they put, they put their, what those things that they use, whatever they are. But the girls were falling at such velocity, 115, 15 and younger girls were killed. Okay? Now, what does it take to bring about change? You know, there were the girls themselves, there were the family of the girls, and there were a lot of people out there who had a choice to make. That is none of my business. I hope that does not happen to my daughter. What can I do to bring about change? Okay? And how you answer that questions is part of your peace journey, because a lot of times we're not going to be the people initiate. We're going to be asked, what is our relationship to what is going on? And it's very easy to say that's none of my business. I didn't do that. I wouldn't do that. But guess what? There is no such thing as an I. That is a fabrication of the mind that tends to be so objective. The way it interacts with someone is to separate itself from what it's observing and thinking about it, objectifying it, rather than getting immersed in it. When I was married to Paula Innocentia Cafresi, I no longer exist. I mean, not that I didn't have an I. Whatever I did, I thought about the effect on her. When I had children, the I that I had further disintegrated, because I knew whatever happened to my children was affecting me, and whatever I did was affecting them. So we are our brothers and sisters. It's not just Mike, we do that by genetics. We are our brothers and sisters. And one of the great teachings of all religious traditions, oral spiritual traditions, is there is a we, not an I. Okay? We have to move from I to we. And as Margaret Mead said, the famous anthropologist, what we need to do is enhance our definition of who is our family. We used to be, cavemen, and there's the other cave, then we tribes, and then, farmers again, and village, and then states, and so on and so forth there, and we do things for our family we do not do to other people, and we do to other people things we wouldn't do to our family, hopefully. So can we, during our lifetime, enlarge the scope of our family? And I know, my brother Michael, he has, a lot of young people who follow him, and and they're going through hard times, and some of them have even come, a couple, I think, I know that have committed suicide. And Mike, he's got his own troubles, he's got his own troubles, he's a veteran, he's dealing with physical stuff. But Mike has decided, notwithstanding the fact that I have my own stuff to take care of, he's reached out to a lot of these young men and women to ask him, ask them, how are you feeling? What can I do for you? And it would be so easy to say, and, I'm not judging, that's not, I already got too much going on here, and so forth there. Can we reach out to others? Can we reach, and can we make that one of the foods that we eat each day there? Okay, so what else? And I'm coming to the end of this, and we have discussion. It's 1940, so as you all know, World War II is on. Okay, I'm a Jewish kid growing up. During that time, in Madison Square Garden, New York City, we had the Nazi Bund, Heil Hitler, kill the Jews. I'm once again learning, what is this thing called the world? It really is a terrible place, and there are people out there who really want to kill you. Who? They don't even know who I am. What is my relationship to this larger world? What is my relationship, again, to this thing called man? So it's World War I. The war is, is over, and the soldiers are going to come marching home. And I tell my mother, because I'm a child of the times, I told my mother, I want a soldier's uniform. Why? Because I want to be like them. I want to be a brave man. I want to be a soldier. I want to grow up and be a man. So my mother buys me a soldier's uniform, you know, and we go to 42nd Street and the soldiers are walking, you know, going by, and I turned to my mother and I said, isn't this wonderful? Oh, and I feel so, Mom, you know, Mom, I really want to grow up and be a man. I really want to grow up and be like them, you know, a soldier. And, you know, and of course, none of the soldiers marching down the street were Johnny coming marching home without arm or leg. Every soldier was marching down the street was, you know, proud and sexy and, you know, and full of hubris and stuff like that. So I was getting a picture of what it is, you know, what's a soldier? What's a man? What do people do when they carry those guns? Well, you know, I learned a little later, they kill the bad guys. You know, who are the bad guys anyway? So I tell my, I want to be like that. And she turns to me and she says, Label, that's my Yiddish name for Louis Label. I want to tell you a story. Okay. I was once a little girl, about 11 or 12 years old, you know, and this was in Poland. And all the men in the household had left for America or off to war or hiding in the woods. So it was just us women in the village, and I was a girl. And what I was asked to do was to help another woman who was like 26 or 27 years old, to help her with her baby. And I would earn a little bit of money. So I went to help this woman. And we were there, and then one day, there's someone yelling, you know, open the door in Polish. My mother spoke Polish as well as Yiddish. And my mother and the woman and the baby had learned something. When you hear a man's voice yelling at you, it is time to be fearful. Okay? He's probably, even maybe can't understand what he's saying, but the tone of his voice is full of fear. It's not, I'm here to help you there. And it was also, all the men were gone. They do nothing. He continues, nothing happens. So there he takes, I'm telling you from the surface, my mother didn't know this. All she knew was the door was being broken down. And he takes the butt of his rifle and smashes through the door. And he walks into the room. Now, who is this guy? You know, he's the universal soldier. And you know, I'm not taking stuff, saying things against soldiers. You know, I was in the army too. My brothers were in the Navy, but maybe I am. Anyway, so he's a soldier. Well, what is a soldier? It's someone in a uniform who has a gun and a bayonet, but he's also somebody's maybe father, somebody's uncle, somebody's brother, somebody's son, somebody's child. Okay? He's all that at the same time. And he starts looking at us, and then he starts walking towards us, and we are cowering in fear, my son. Who is this person? He's someone's child, someone's brother, someone's father, someone's son. Who is this person? And then he starts walking towards the, you know, the woman, and we know what he's here to do. He's here to rape. Okay? Because throughout history, and virtually, you know, men, I'm not saying also throughout history, rape has occurred by the bad guys and the good guys. So I run to, this is my mother speaking, I run to the window and I want to scream, help. And this person in uniform, who's a, you know, crazy, he's a crazy soldier, also someone's son, someone's father, so on and so forth there, comes over with his bayonet, takes his bayonet, puts it against my throat. My mother's like 9 or 11 years old, and tells her if she screams, he's going to slit her throat. No, who's telling her this? Some crazed person? No, someone's brother, someone's soldier, someone's child, who somehow, by personal experience and institutionalized education, socialization, became this crazed person, because the same person would not be doing that. The compassion. If this was happening in his home, he was the child, he would look at this person, this American, this Russian, this Yugoslavian, and say, who is that person? That person is crazy. What's happened to that person? So obviously I don't yell. I walk back to where the young woman is, you know, woman taking care of the child, and he's walking towards the woman, and I grab up the baby and I start running away. He turns, takes his bayonet and puts it through the baby's head. Who's doing this? Walt Kelly's Pogo, if you know the cartoon, we have met the enemy and he is us. Because this is not just a crazy person. This is someone's son, someone's father, someone's brother, someone's child who has been turned into this. But we also know there's a Gandhi, there's a Martin Luther King, there's a Dorothy Dandridge, there's an Eartha Kitt, that there are people who decide, living on the same earth that we are living on, faced with the same human challenges that we are faced with tragedies and joy. There are people who choose to put on that uniform, and there's people who choose to put on a different uniform, okay? And who are those people? They are both us, okay? It's what we decide. So what did my mother have to say? I have to read this because I don't speak the language anymore. This is what she said. She concluded her tale of terror. This is in the latest book I'm writing, and woe by saying, expressed in Yiddish, the mana zazayin meshuganer, or as my Puerto Rican wife would say, los hombres están locos. In either case, the translation is the same. The men are crazy. The men are crazy. Okay. What men? Well, the soldier in Poland, the person in Vietnam, the person in Washington, D.C. who crashed into Congress. But in Chicago, one of the highest, risk to women's health in this great metropolis, civilized Chicago, one of the greatest risks to women's public health is domestic violence. It ranks like 3 or 4. More women, almost as much women go to the hospital, seek shelter, from domestic violence as they do from, all the diseases that are out there. And who's committing domestic violence? Someone's son, someone's brother, someone's father, someone's husband, someone's child. We have met the enemy and he is us. Until we accept that reality, that within us, we have the propensity to that, or we have the propensity to just stand by what other things are happening, we're going to make all kinds of rationalizations to justify our behavior for not being actively engaged on the peace and justice train. We are very brilliant people. We can come up with reasons to do virtually anything. And then I had a woman in my peace studies class, one of them saying the following thing. This was a night class. Where? City, Chicago. White girl going home to, a pretty nice neighborhood, if I remember her. I never walk alone. I always walk with fear. I never walk alone. I always walk with fear. Okay. And I remember when my daughter, and I might have told you this, when Anna was going off to college, I think I said this once before, but it's apropos here. Then I'm going to read one short, and then we're going to have a discussion. When Anna was going off to college, my daughter, she's 17 years old, 17 and a half, she's going to University of Iowa. I have a father-son talk with her, and I ask her, Anna, it's her life. Would you want to be on birth control? Now she might have been already, or she might not have been. Although I know because we had a very good relationship, and she said yes. And facetiously, I think I asked her why. Now she's going off to the University of Iowa. She said because if I get raped, I don't want to get pregnant. Raped by whom? Not a guy with a hoodie. But a nice man, nice boy, come from a nice family, from a nice home, from a nice neighborhood. Because so many of her friends who had gone off to college had been raped. By who? Our brothers, our sons, our fathers, our children. Until we realize we have met the enemy and that seed is within us to sprout, we're going to find all kinds of reasons not to work on that seed. Like that. So if you believe in spirituality and so you're going to come back, or your soul's going to come back still burdened by that. Okay. Or that seed is going to be planted in our children. My son, Ben, some of you know Ben, is a very gentle young man. And that is one of the proudest things of my being a father. I have raised a very gentle, compassionate, and loving young man. But I know when he was growing up, at times at school, he was taunted, for not being tough enough, not wanting to be a fighting and stuff like that there, for crying. Okay? He was being taunted, challenged. And not just by someone, what we call the hood, because there's a hood on the South Side, but there's a hood also in suburbia. Okay? He was challenged. What is to be a man? What am I supposed to do to earn the respect of my peers? How can I walk through here? Okay, last thing I'm going to read, then we have a discussion. This is Educating for Peace by Bridget Bach Utney. And she poses this question in her book. I wanted to know, for example, why sex, human and gender, is the most consistent, predictable, how violent a person will be in all cultures, races, and classes in human history. And why are 90% of all violent crimes committed by men? Why are males the violent sex? And she asked this question because she had just given birth to a boy. And she wanted to learn how to help foster a boy, peace and justice and compassion, and not turn into that. So let's stop here. And I like other people to, come and say, why are men, at least responding to her, why are males the violent sex? Okay, folks. Ilya, we can all talk? Hello, Ilya, where are you?
I'm here. Yeah, everybody, if you want people to talk, they have.
Yeah, let's have a little discussion among us. You just heard this by Bridget. I gave you something. I gave you something from my growing up. And why are males? And we talk about domestic violence. And Paula, my wife, who worked, and she was she worked in Board of Education. She dealt with a lot of domestic violence. Okay, she came up to Evanston. She dealt with a lot of domestic violence from white kids, black kids, Hispanic kids, poor kids, middle-class kids, upper-class kids, and there were some by women, but almost all were by men. And we're not here, neither am I. I'm not trying to say men are terrible creatures. I'm a man, I got a son there, okay? But, we have to realize that men are in large part, have been on a trip, and it has not been in large part a good trip. And what do we want to do to create, our higher civilization? That means a lot of working with the male species. Okay, so why are men the violent sex? And maybe you believe they're not. Okay, we're open for conversation. Hi, everybody. Make believe Bridget Utney is here. Talk, yeah. Yana. Yana, no, who is? Yes. Ilya, can everyone talk?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, let's respond to Bridget Utney. Why are males of violent sex?
Interesting that I do not know. Moreover, from my experience, you describe such a violent experience in your life, and somehow I managed to go through my life without actually experiencing it, neither in my family, nor with my wife's family, nor myself. And I do not know the answer. I know that you're right. I know that it's probably a cultural thing. It's probably something that males are supposed to consider themselves this way, that their masculinity comes, but I do not know. Maybe it's better to ask female women to answer this question. Maybe they know better about this phenomena. I cannot answer.
Well, we can have whatever your sexual preference is. Anyone can respond here, and let's have other people responding.
Hello there.
Who's talking?
This is Daniel.
Daniel.
Hello.
Yeah. Yes. Hi, Daniel. Yeah, I know. Hi, Daniel.
Yeah, I'm sorry I don't have a camera, but
okay, we hear you.
Orange Square. Yeah, I've thought about this at length. Male masculinity is not something that's like included in culture, in teachings, in schools, and that is a huge problem with like what brings men to the position of being this, you know, masculine character, this hero figure, like wanting to attain that just because of the stories that they're told, and instead of men getting together at a younger age and interacting with each other and talking about what it means to be a man, like as opposed to like automatically thinking what it means to be a man. It's very autonomous in our culture. Like the discussion literally just doesn't happen. And like in a way, like I see it also as a suppression of masculinity in culture at the moment. I'm not saying that, like, you know, feminist movements or anything like that are a bad thing, but there seems to be like a suppression of masculinity now because of the way it's seen in culture as being like a meathead. You know what I mean? A lot of
Yeah, I
people
think
see
everyone knows what you mean.
meathead.
Whether they agree or not is you know, something else there. I just want to respond to the first part, and then maybe other people will respond to the second part. Masculinity is taught in schools, okay? It's the male teachers, you know, at least in the school I went to, who were the enforcers, okay? We read a lot of stories about war, and we learned through those stories, you know, what is a man there. We saw a lot of films about war when I was in school there. I'm now going to jump. You know, what is a man? Marty, hi Marty, good that you're here. Hi, this Marty, he's a wonderful filmmaker now and goes on boats and does incredible things with boats right now. But Marty was a student at Columbia College, and it might be before his time there. But I know back I started Columbia in the 1960s, and you got to go back to the 1960s there. We had a dean who was openly gay and Black, okay? We had a counselor who was very gay, you know, there. We had some women who were lesbian. I'm talking about guys there. I'm trying to remember there. We had some faculty who were openly gay. And they didn't come out and say, I'm gay, you know, or I'm this, you know, that. But the students at Columbia were learning something, even though it wasn't part of the curriculum. They were learning that there's varieties of being a male, and whether you're this straight or gay, there are behaviors that the male species can emanate, you know, whatever they are, you know. And if you want to be tougher, you know, you're going to have a male there who's going to, you know, teach. And if you want to be more gentler, maybe there's a male there also there. So even though we didn't have lessons on what is it to be a male, and whether it's in grammar school, the war stories and stuff like that, the war films and so on and so forth there, the cops who were always the good guys, the crime stories, you know, Dragnet, where the cops were always the good guys and so on and so forth there, and they're tough and they beat people up there like that. We learn all the time, you know, what it is to be a male. And as I said, I was learning from my father some lessons that I took in, that it took quite a bit of therapy to let go of. You know, I didn't really want to see who I was. And I learned how I was. You really learn who you are in relationship. Because I can make up all kinds of stories talking about who I am or who you are. But in relationship, you know, the other person mirrors you or shares with you who you are. Okay. And that can be, but I was learning, you know, I was learning from my mother, you know, well, you can change the world. And women, man, you know, women are tough too. You know, my mother used to hug us and feed us and, you know, suckle us, but she was also tough too, you know, and that was the kind of image when I was going to be with a woman. I want a woman that's all that, you know, yeah, not just to fulfill my certain male desires, so on and so forth there. So let's keep on going. Other people, why are males of violent sex? Well, you agree or disagree, you know?
It's Loretta.
Yeah, go Loretta.
I noticed on the November or the January 9th event in Washington, there were a lot of women.
Yeah.
And they were violent. They were as violent as the men. And I think that for centuries, because men were physically stronger and women were tied to babies and family, and men had to do things that were more dangerous while the women stayed home, they got conditioned to be this aggressive, violent, protective animal. And we didn't really change that for centuries. And now women are getting more permission to bring out that kind of protect that lioness in us. And I see a balance that's starting to shift. The military, what women have to go through to be in the military today, and have in country. Well, Israel's always had women in the military, but conditioning that part of a person, and I think we all have that part. There's that Indian, the tale of the grandfather talking to his child, and the grandfather says, every person has a lion and a lamb in them. And the little child says, well, which one survives? And he said, the one you feed. So, and you said earlier, we make choices in our lives, and there's also testosterone, that causes, we're physically kind of, women have different hormones. So I think some of it is our biology, that men are built to be more angry, but that they're allowed to do it is another story. That's a societal failure.
But that's true.
Thank you, Loretta.
It is.
Kathy, come on in. Kathy is a colleague, longtime colleague of mine at Columbia College. Kathy, come on, share your thoughts.
Well, I was listening to you, but then last night I was, oh God, what's the guy's name? I can't think of it right now, but it was Consider the Lobster. And he was going back, discussing males, from the lobster all the way back to crustaceans and the aggression that was there, and the harem of women that were there. So he was just saying certain things were planetary, the kind of Giordano Bruno, that idea that if you are here, there's certain attributes that just come living on this planet. So I was listening to that, and I'm listening to you right now, and I just was thinking of when my son was young, where he showed up, he made himself bigger and louder, and he was just a toddler. We're talking about long before he was nursery school, just wanting that, just showing himself in this really grand way that he loved. And even now, at his age, he sent me, he put something on his Facebook, and he's walking on his hands, and he's doing a pull-up with one arm. It's the same little boy who ran into those rooms. Yeah. A lion is chasing me. It's my son, right?
Okay. Valora, come on in. Valora's a longtime family friend, more so of my wife than me, but she is a glorious person. Valora, share your thoughts?
Okay, well, I think it is true that there are hormonal components that can be acted out or honed into different behaviors, but that most of it's socialization. What comes to mind for me is the notion of the alpha male that is revered in many cultures, not all cultures, but many cultures. And sports, which I find abhorrent and brings out, I think, all of the stuff, all the aggression, all the competitiveness, and that we seem to find to be very important in our culture, and what, I don't know, Western cultures, I don't know necessarily, but the sports are, certainly an arena where that plays out, and actually the blowback is often leads to domestic violence too. You know, you hear about that after the games, how many men go home and beat their wives. You know, so I think it's mostly socialization. Yeah.
Not what Laura's saying, I think is very vital. And at the same time, this thing called sports, I mean, I used to, I was in the high school handball team. I ran track and I wanted to win. And then in my 20s, I started smoking marijuana. And so the people I hang around with, and we didn't care who won. We were just playing. We couldn't give a damn who won. It was just, and if someone fell down, you helped the person up. So I think, what that illustrates is when we are participating in an action called sports, there's different ways to play that. And depending on the state of consciousness that we are in, when we're engaged in sports or anything else, we have different ways of behaving. Okay? We have very different ways of behaving there. And, certainly, whether what Kathy is saying, boy, children, more like that, there's, let's say there's a lot of truth to that. So the challenge is, what do you want to do with that energy? What do you want to do with that energy? And I know, Paul and I have done our best as parents, but we are imperfect souls. Okay? We're imperfect, better than our parents, who were better than their parents, and our children be better parents. We're imperfect souls. And at times, our children were angry at us, they, in their mind, mostly justifiably, and we thought they were just being very difficult. And what did they do with their anger? I could have said to Anna, or Paula could have said to Anna or Ben, stop being angry. Okay? And you know what? They probably would, because we're bigger than them. We have power over them. They want goodies from us. But if I just say to a male child, stop being angry, all I'm doing is allowing that anger to boil up more and then to go some other place. And where someone touches that child wrong or something else there, all that anger will come out. It will all come out somewhere. So Paula being the artist, she is, what she said, and another thing, she's also a therapist. She said, let's put up some, large pieces of, paper, not paper, contact paper, whatever it is. And we gave her children lots of crayons and lots of other stuff. And when they were upset, they learned to, rather than say to mom and dad, I hate you or fuck you or something like that, or I'm leaving home, they would go to there and they would scribble out and, take that there and make smudges and then draw a figure in someone and go after that. They were allowed to express that incredible energy, but they were allowed to do it in ways that were not harmful to others or themselves, there. And then the energy expressed, and then we can have a discussion. So whatever it is, Mike, whatever it is, that we can't deny that there is energy. There's, and the truth is, both males and females have what we call, I don't like the gender thing. Each of us have male and female energy. We're both there. But okay, so it's a challenge. What do you allow that energy to be? And there's a shame right now that's that arts have been cut out. Theater has been cut back. Because all those are ways for children to really express themselves, not just and thoughtfully, but also whole body. And one of the things we don't realize about teaching a culture, is that all of us are whole bodies. And in most classrooms, it's the mind, you're constrained, and your body is still filled with energy, man, and creativity. And you go to a dance class, you go to a Tai Chi class, you go to a theater class, and you have an opportunity to release that in a healthy way. We can't deny that exists. Mike, brother Mike.
Yes, I have a couple points. First of all, in the very beginning, when we're taught in our socialization, I think somebody mentioned that earlier, biblical, when we read the Bible, the first thing we are taught is that all men are violent because of Cain's action, and all women are deceptive because of Eve's action. So that is the first socialization that we are presented to as young people. Mm-hmm. But what I really wanted to talk about is back about 12, 13 years ago, there was a article in Billboard magazine, and music is always a bellwether of violence or action, social action within a society. And Quincy Jones and Teddy Pendergrass had a long discussion about soul music. Now, soul music in the 60s and the 70s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, if you remember, was all about love. Okay, and everybody was in love. Lionel Richie, it was always about true love. Okay, but then something happened, something changed. And what happened, what they talked about is something rose called the baby mama. Back in the old days, when you fell in love, you took on a responsibility. You raised your children. Okay, you were a part of the, in many cases, up until the late 60s, the male was the primary breadwinner within the family. So all that burden fell upon the man. Well, what happened is the baby mama said, listen, we can cut the man out and you have to pay us for the privilege. So what happened is the men started sitting around on the stoops. And that was the birth of what you would call old school rap, because they would start all of a sudden voicing their feelings. All of a sudden, the love wasn't there. And while they're sitting on a stoop, all of a sudden they're getting in trouble and they're becoming more and more violent because they cannot go out and fulfill the full equation of what love is between two people. And all of a sudden that violence all of a sudden spread into what you would call gangster rap and the violent rap that came out, where people were starting to voice their feelings because that anger started rising up. And that was birthed out of all of that. It's funny, we keep cycling through this love and hate phase of misandry and misogyny because both exist. And until we can face that both sides, I think personally, my own feeling is I've seen violent men, but I've also seen my share of violent women also. So it's kind of a hard discussion. I know I'm a small person. I'm 5'5", 120, 25 pounds most of my life. Most of my time when I was in a nightclub, I had to wear an earring over here because I didn't want to get picked up by the guys because I was heterosexual. Okay, so you had to be like that. But I just saw this underlying violence amongst all of them. And when, that's why things like sports exists to address that situation. When I forget who said that, I didn't catch her name, but sports exists as a substitute for war in some instances, just like chess existed. When chess was first introduced in India, it was meant to quell violence. Okay, so it would create another abstract for war. So I don't know whether it's all a pile on the men. I mean, yes, men are very violent. They can be very violent when they want to be. But at the same time, I think there has to be a balance in looking at the situation.
Okay. Anyone else want to come in? Yuri, you're a man of science, logic. Okay, come on in. What are your thoughts, Yuri?
Yeah, I will try to look from a different perspective.
Please.
In nature, we know that the most violent and the most aggressive species are the most insecure ones. And so I see a lot of insecurity in violent men. We may discuss what makes men more insecure. We may be bringing them up under pressure, try to be a man, be strong, be a savior. Questions like you asked yourself, I want to be a man, how am I going to be a man? Women typically are less insecure, maybe because the role is defined, maybe for some other reasons, I don't know. But definitely most of the violent men that I have seen were at the same time the most insecure.
Okay. I want to change direction right now. And we're not going to come up with final answers. We're engaged in a discussion and trying to understand. Let's turn the tables. What can we do about the violence? Okay, and let's start with violence in, we can go to violence to women as, and violence to men. I want to stay in the man thing because I want to remind what Bridget Brocknotny said, why 90% of all violent crimes committed by men, why are males violent sex? And we say maybe they've been given permission, maybe socialization, whatever the case might be. The reality is males do more of this. So what can be done? Okay, Marty.
You even said it when you were talking about Ben and how you raised Ben. And it's teach your children. I've raised a son who is also a gentleman.
Yes.
And he is compassionate and he cares. And that gives me great, great pride that, and he knows not to be violent against women. And he not even against other men unless he is assaulted, and then he'll take defensive action. He'll walk away from a fight. He's a pretty big guy, but he'll walk away from a fight. He doesn't want to do that. But if somebody threatens him or threatens somebody he's with, he will defend. And I think that's the best we can do is to teach our young men how to be compassionate, to be men, to be gentlemen.
Okay. Yeah, Loretta.
Marty, I agree with that. In 1969, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross wrote on Death and Dying that our denial of death is going to create weapons of mass destruction and violence and wars everywhere. And I think the fact that for so many young men, sports people, danger, and the fact that they feel invincible is part of the drive to win, to fight, to be on top, to be strong, and all the things that create this aggression. And I really think if we integrated the fact that we're all mortal, that we would be gentler people overall.
Well, it's part of our corporate culture, these metaphors of sports as part of our corporate culture. We've got to win. We've got to break through. We've got to move the goalpost, whatever metaphor you want to use. And it is built around this aggressive male-dominated culture. Doesn't mean that women aren't part of that.
I want to kind of connect this, picking up what Loretta said. There was a book by Ernest Becker called Denial of Death.
Yeah.
It's a very famous book. And his basic thesis is that we all know, whether consciously or subconsciously, that we're going to die. And that can be a tremendous fear, okay? And we'll do anything to deny that. We'll build large mausoleums there. We'll make believe there's something, in a beautiful heaven or something along there. And that fear is so deep within us, okay? Unless we allow ourselves to feel that fear and work it through in some way, that fear in so many people results in violent behavior, okay? Because when you're in fear, you tend to either run or attack. And women, and yeah, there are exceptions to this. There's no question about it. And now we're talking about women, it's more fluid there. I don't know what your experience, but my experience has been, women are more in touch with their emotions than most guys I've known. And it's one of the reasons I've been more comfortable with women than men there. And there's a greater expression. I know my wife, when she talks with her friends, they talk about everything. Their children, their fears, what's going through their bodies, and I think, I used to play ball and hang out in Northwestern. What's happening? Everything's cool, man. How's your family? Everything is cool. What do the Bears do on the weekend? And there was little expression with the men of the trouble they were having at home, And those feelings are there. Now, what do they do with their feelings? And some men come home and act out another way, or too many guys drink or do something else there. They weren't allowing themselves to really feel their emotions and express those emotions there. And I say Becker thing is that emotion is so strong, unless we somehow allow it to be out there, we're going to continue to have a violent society. which I think is a very, very interesting thesis. But I also, want to say, I'm looking at time, that there's personal behavior we can engage in, in terms of, raising our children, influencing the people we are close to. But I also know, that certainly in my own journey to being a more peaceful and just man, was models of behavior that went beyond just the personal. And as I think I don't remember anymore, I'm too old to share, but I'm going to City College, New York. I'm going to be an accountant because that's the safest thing. It's safe, it's secure, you make money. And I came from, a background where most people didn't have money and there. And I'm majoring in accounting, City College, New York. And then I meet Bernie Bellish, the only teacher other than some people I knew at Columbia College, whose name I even remember. I meet Bernie Bellish, who's a history teacher. And we're learning about the history of the United States of America, and we're learning about the Bill of Rights. And I said this to, and it's the 1950s, Red Scare, and all over in New York there. Professor Bell is called before the House Internal Security Committee. He's asked, "Are you a communist or your friend?" He refuses to testify. Fifth Amendment, and it just blew my mind. Here is a man who's earning a good salary, but who's also living what he speaks. And he's going beyond his fear and beyond his security. And I said, I want to be like that. Okay, I want to be like that. Okay, I want to be like that. And what I also said, I'm looking to share with when teaching culture, peace, and justice, I also include felt truth as well as and I'm not talking about fake truth, felt, F-E-L-T, as well as factual truth. So when I was showing something, I remember when I was teaching high school, Ramparts magazine had a special issue on the children of Vietnam. And they had sent Benjamin Spock, the famous baby doctor, to Vietnam, along with a famous photographer, whose name I don't know, and their goal was just to photograph children. And they came back and they published this, okay? And given who I was hanging around with, I became aware of the magazine. And when you open this magazine, you would see, who are the souls, who's collateral damage. And it was a magazine totally filled with children, whose bodies had been blown apart there, who were missing parts of their body, faces melting. Now, what do you do with that as a teacher? You say, well, I shouldn't show that to my students because they're going to get too emotional. Well, you know what? The thing to do when you're dealing with that is to get too emotional.
Yeah.
Because too emotional will move you. Staying back and just kind of, hearing about that, speaking about that allows you to stand back and not say, wait a minute now, what are they doing in my name? And we would talk, reason and logic. What are the causes of this? What's the reasons behind this and stuff like that? But I'd also ask my students to slow down, breathe, okay? Breathe. And I want you to take a picture of one of those children into your mind. And during your breathing, I want you to breathe in the pain and suffering of those children. I just don't want you to know about that. Okay? And then we have a discussion afterwards of what the effect is to, use the mind to study, but also to use the emotional aspect. Our hearts are intelligent. They're not stupid. And they would take that in. And I learned, that more of the students then would engage in action beyond doing papers, which are fine, or doing well on tests. They actually would take that in and do well in life. They would take that out into life. So I think when we're dealing with teaching, virtually anything, to someone who isn't like totally obsessed, it's like someone teaching math. And someone comes in who's not really, have to learn math, but they're not really math. The teacher says, tough, this is how we teach math. You're going to come to the subject, or you say, wait a minute now, how can I teach the subject in such a way that engages the student who isn't oriented to a particular subject? And it's not just through the mind. You have to somehow get the person to feel this, to actually feel this there. So I'm going to stop with one last thing, no, two last things, and then because of time, and then if there's any more time, what else can we do? It's Columbia College. Anna is young, my daughter. It's nighttime, teaching my night class. We're leaving for home. It's late at night. It's snowing, We're driving past Grant Park, and Anna says, "Dad, stop." So I stop. "What's happening, Anna?" "Dad, look." Yeah, I look. She says, "See the man? Look at the man. He's walking in the snow without shoes." He said, "Anna, you know what? It's late at night. I'm tired. I want to go home. That's not my problem." And Anna says, "Dad, stop the car. That is your problem." Okay? That is your problem. We can't just go home. We just can't go home. I want you to go out and give some money to that man. I said, "Anna, he might do something." "Dad, stop this. Give some money." I said, "Anna, I have $5. She said, "No, Dad, you're giving him $15. How much you think a pair of shoes cost?" So she makes me go out, walk through the snow, go over to this man and give him $15. Okay? Well, that's an act of peace, and it's an act of compassion. It's making me break through, the norm behavior, so on and so forth there. And sometimes, we have to teach, and sometimes children really have to teach us. They really have to teach us, so on and so forth there. And then the last thing is, and I also used to say this to my students too. When I was 20 years old, I dropped out of City College, New York. I was terribly bored, and I think some of you know. And I went and joined the United States Army. Okay. And I learned to be a good soldier, I learned how to kill, I learned how to blow people up, and so on and so forth. And luckily, I didn't have to go off to war because it was 1960, and we really weren't sending too many guys over to Vietnam then. And after serving my active service, I go into the active Army Reserve. And, it's over for me. I did my duty and so on and so forth there. And then what's happening? Vietnam is coming in. I'm hearing stuff, reading stuff, so on and so forth there. And I go somewhere and someone says to me, you know what? If there's injustice and you don't get involved, you're feeding the injustice. You're allowing the injustice to occur. You are involved. Okay, not changing the status quo. So I reflect on who I want to be, how I want to walk through this world, and I applied for release as a conscientious objector, meaning I refused to kill on the orders of my government. Okay, now if I had gone to wars, gone to war, come home, I get medals, I'm refusing to kill. I'm facing like 2 or 3 years in the brig and a $5,000 fine. And I say it to my students for a couple of reasons. One is that I'm no different than you. I'm not a hero. I was scared shitless. Okay? But I had run into some men in my life who told me, you really got to walk your talk. You really got to walk what you believe in. No matter what your success is, if you don't do what Frank Sinatra said, I did it my way, where you truly are, at the end, you're going to be really an unhappy being, an unhappy soul, okay? You really were not fulfilled your journey, your destiny on earth like that. So, that there. And then we're ending with, if I can find it, Mr. Bob Dylan. You're going to have to serve somebody. Yes, indeed. You're going to have to serve somebody. Well, it may be the devil or it may be the Lord, but you're going to have to serve somebody. Who are you going to serve? Who are you going to serve? Okay. All right. Any questions, any comments, or I'm here for a while, although I'm cooking dinner, I'm making Dad's chicken. My wife is anxiously waiting for, Dad's chicken.
Dad's chicken.
Knockout. It is such an incredible knockout, Dad's chicken.
What is Dad's
Okay.
chicken?
Anybody want to say anything?
What's the recipe for Dad's chicken?
What?
Yes, that's what I want to know.
I
What?
want to know. Inquiring minds. What's the
I'm
recipe?
bottling it with her herbs. Going to sell it.
What's the recipe
This
for
is a
Dad's chicken?
capitalist society, man. I'm not going to give you free Dad's chicken recipe. No.
Wait a minute.
Ray Charles
I
said,
deserve that.
give me those greenback dollar bills.
No.
Listen to Ray Charles. And then, but Paul and I share a lot of our dollar bills with other people. We're very grateful that we've had good jobs, we've made decent amounts of money, and and we live a decent, a good life, and we share, a bunch of our stuff with other people. That's for a whole variety of reasons. There, like that. Or anyone else want to have some concluding words, because it is time to end.
There's so much, and we've just barely scratched the surface, and I
know,
look forward to doing this again.
I have
and
a
being
part
part
two.
of this group.
I do have a part two, and so maybe sometime in the future. Marty, it's so good to see you.
It's good to see you too.
Okay.
It's great to see you, Louis.
Yeah.
You were such an inspiration to me. It probably changed my life a lot. So thank you.
Thank you.
I was reading about the incel movement. I don't know if everybody's familiar with it,
Yeah.
but it's diabolical. It's this, involuntary celibacy where it's a war on women because they won't freely give these guys sex and that's just another part of the crazy social system in which we live. And I don't even want to get started. I just wanted to bring it up.
Okay. Well, someone's going to have to end it with something else but that.
Please, please.
Okay, I want to end. This is peace and that is there. We have to recognize that and do what people can to work against that there. So and so. I feel the truth is I think what Yuri was saying. People who are insecure and stuff like that. Man, that really can lead to a bunch of terrible behavior. These guys, their behavior, acting out should not be allowed. But these really guys are really, there's a sadness about them. They are really so hurt, there. So on one level, don't allow the action. Other level, people, hopefully someone will donate a lot of money for therapy by a really busty girl, who they'll go to, and the therapist, will then work them through, even though the initial attraction was the bust of Brett, the therapist will then work them through to something else there, like that. I want someone to say a few words, something positive, and then we're going to call it an evening. And it's been great to see everybody. I don't want to end with Encel, but
I'm sorry.
It's okay, Marty. If you don't know what it is, look it up. It's ENCEL. Right?
But therapy is an important thing that's been overlooked in our culture and in our society for quite a while, and they just turned them out on the streets.
Especially now, they're being turned on in large numbers out on the streets.
Yeah.
Well, I have something positive. I know a lot of younger men who are really good fathers and sharing household, and I see a whole transition in relationships between men and women in families now. And I think it's because women aren't tolerating it anymore, and neither are the men.
Right. Yeah.
They like being nice.
Right.
Men like being nice.
Right. And it's and
Yeah,
all this
that way.
okay. And all this has come out of the closet.
Yeah.
Okay, it's come out of the closet, which is absolutely wonderful there. Okay, I have to turn over Dad's chicken. So we can eat it. We also are having wonderful yams, and we have also Idaho potatoes that we pierce. And if you pierce them, they cook more quickly all the way through. And then we have for dessert, we have some blueberries, wonderful frozen blueberries that we put on top of, at least I put on pumpkin seeds. Paula puts on top of popcorn. But we each have our path. We each have to go our ways and respect each way. So great to see each of you. Okay, peace and justice to all.
Thanks. Good